Hi again, everybody, and this is episode 14 of Life Lessons in Combat Sports. Eric Hamidi here once again, and I will definitely say it's getting a lot warmer. So I may have to start doing these a little bit later at night, but hey, that's what happens when we start entering the summertime. But in any event, I'm here with another edition of MMA, and we're just continuing along with the theme. I got two more editions of that for you, and something that I'll point out just right from the get-go. This is kind of interesting. There's kind of a nice little through line between all the episodes I'm doing. Now, I didn't plan for that. That wasn't my intention, but it just sort of worked out that way just because, I'm doing this. Okay. I did the episode on GSP, and then from there I was referencing Matt Hughes and all that stuff, and then the next episode I'm talking about BJ Penn, and he and Matt Hughes, they have a history together. And if you remember, if you saw episode 13, is that I was referencing how BJ Penn fought against this person named Jens Pulver, and that just so happens to be the topic of today's episode. Today I'm going to talk about something that I heard Jens Pulver say in an interview, and this one is really important to me, or this one is, I guess, close to my heart, because there's a particular time where I became a fan of Jens Pulver, and it's kind of noteworthy. I mean, there's only so much I can talk about, but I know that there's going to be other times, or there'll be instances in the future where I talk about him again. This is not going to be the last time. So some of that stuff I'll say for another time, just given that I'm a little short on time and all that stuff. So I figure, as I usually do, I need to give you guys a little bit of a background on who Jens Pulver is. So he was a former mixed martial artist who grew up wrestling and did that throughout school, and then he transitioned into MMA. And something that I feel like is noteworthy about him that I feel doesn't really get talked about a lot. I mean, a lot of times people say that BJ Penn was the guy who created or made the lightweight division what it is today. But to be honest, a lot of that credit also has to go to Jens Pulver, because he was one of the first guys in the lightweight division, or one of the first fighters who was fighting in that weight class, because there really wasn't a lower weight class beyond 170. But then that started getting created. They started getting fighters in there. And as it turns out, Jens Pulver, here's a fun fact, he is the first ever UFC Lightweight champion. He won that title in 2001 against Call Uno, and what's a little funny is that at the time they called that division the bantamweight division, and then later they renamed it the lightweight division. So he was the inaugural champion, and he won that, like I said, won it in 2001, defended the title once, and then the second title defense was against BJ Penn, where a lot of people were expecting BJ to just come in and maul him or just dominate and become champion. But Pulver had other plans, so that didn't happen. And Jens retained his title. So from there, he fought for several more years. Actually, it's a little funny because one of my favorite MMA fights, from Pride at least, is Takanori Gomi versus Jens Pulver. And I think it has something to do with the fact that the sound of the punches landing for both of these fighters onto their opponent has always stuck with me. So he's out of UFC for a few years, but then eventually returns in 2006, has a couple fights there, and then transitions into WEC, where that was a sister promotion that the UFC eventually bought, which highlighted and featured bouts from the lighter weight classes, eventually what it became was from lightweight downward. And he was there for a couple years, and that's when, unfortunately, this losing streak of his began. And it was really intense, and just, it was really hard to see. But the interesting thing about it was that was at a time where I actually became a fan of his. And there's only so much I can go into detail about with this, with that story, but basically, at the time they were making a documentary on him, and through that I got to get more familiar with his story and the type of person he is, his background and all that stuff. So to see that, and also, okay, perhaps I should set the table like this. As a child, Jens Pulver, he had a abusive father, and there were a lot of instances where he was beat on by his dad. And from what I've seen in that documentary, which is called Driven, I would recommend people watch that. It's really good. But from what I gathered, when Jen started wrestling, that was the thing that really helped him out, or was a positive influence and gave him something to strive for. So he had the turmoil at home, and that his mom or his siblings were dealing with and all that stuff. But when he went to wrestling tournaments, that's where the best of him and the best of emotions came out, if you will. So they talked about that in the documentary. And for me personally, going through the I guess the hurdles and the problems and just the turmoil that I was at that time, but to learn about Jens Pulver's story and to hear about the things he went through. And honestly, as I've gotten older, this is just as important. Learning about the kind of person that Jens Pulver is, that's a reason why he has become one of my favorite MMA fighters. It's even to the degree that, quite honestly, even hearing just small segments, or even hearing small parts of his story, that helped me out tremendously. And that's something that I'm always grateful for, and something that I just really like. Just hearing the things that he kind of went through, and then just the positive, I guess, interpretations, or the positive mindset that he maintained, especially during the most difficult part of his career, just going on a 6-fight losing streak. I mean, that was incredible to me. And there's a lot of life lessons from that documentary, and just from Jens Pulver in general, that I can honestly make episodes out of. And yeah, it's an amazing story. And I think, honestly, when you become a fan of someone during a losing streak, I think that says something. So that's why he's one of my favorite MMA fighters of all time. So he's on this losing streak, and then eventually he's out of WEC and goes on to fight more on the regional circuit, fought for this Asian promotion called One Championship. And then eventually he had his last fight in 2013. And as far as the MMA career goes, that's really all there was to it for Jens Pulver. And from this interview that I saw, he made an appearance on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani after they announced that he was going to get inducted into the Hall of Fame. This was 2 years ago. And from what I saw in that interview, it seems like he had a really difficult time trying to find his way through life after his athletic career was over. And you see that in the Driven documentary, which is, I guess, seeing this interview from 2023 and then remembering the stuff from the documentary, which was released in 2010. It's really interesting to see how that progressed, and how he changed, and how he reached a point of peace in his life. And all of that really just stems from the life lesson that I'm going to cover, that I'm going to talk about in this particular episode. So what it is, what I heard from this interview that I thought was just so, I mean, I guess I'm just absorbing it more and taking it in more and just really seeing the value of it, or just kind of, I mean, really just understanding it more. Because during this interview, so what he's up to now is that he has his own Twitch stream, and he does that for the UFC events. And I forgot to mention that he's also a big video game guy, so that's just right up his alley and all that stuff. And he really enjoys it. As he put it, it combined his passion for talking and fighting and video games all into one. So he discovered that and did that, ran with it, and that's what he's up to. So that was an instance that, and I guess I'll say this, is that during this interview he did say, oh, this is my advice to other retired fighters. But honestly, I think really anybody can take something away from it. It's just, honestly, you need to find your passion in life, and whatever that may be, you got to look for it, you got to find it. And I mean, truer words have never been spoken. I mean, when you look at yourself and you think, okay, what is it that I like to do? And if you're not sure what that is, then you go ahead and look for it. You search for it, you find it. And I guess I find some of that kind of interesting, because I kind of feel like this episode is a little bit of a tie-in with episode 2 that I did, where I'm talking about how this analyst that I follow, Luke Thomas, he's saying how he wants his kid to be happy. And in that episode, I'm talking about how the process that you can go through to try to figure out what it is you like, you know, just exposing yourself. And I guess I was saying this from a parental perspective, is that you want your kid to be happy, so you have them do things that they like to do. And how do you find out what they like to do? You just expose them to a lot of things and see what they kind of gravitate towards, because I feel like that motivation will help them do it in the long term, or just help them stick with something, as opposed to, being forced to do something and not really having a passion for it. So that, I feel like, sort of ties in, or is similar to what Jens is saying, is that, what do you like to do? And if you don't know what that is, if you haven't found it yet, then go ahead and find it and search for it. And, you know, there's a lot of ways that someone can do that. So those words are really, I mean, here's the thing. I knew I wanted to do a Jens Pulver episode, and there's a lot of things that I can start with, but I guess I chose this because it's just that whole idea of finding your passion. I mean, that's just resonating with me a lot more these days. It's just really speaking to me, and I just view it as invaluable. And I just figured that's a good thing to try to get across to people. And also that's sort of like tying in with the theme of all these episodes that I've been doing the last few months. And honestly, this is something that I'm doing, this podcast. This is something that I'm passionate about. I mean, I guess it's sort of my way of combining a lot of different loves that I have into one. And that's the thing that's making me enjoy it. And, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into doing a podcast and doing these videos and all that stuff. And I mean, just cards on the table, I have my certain hurdles with it. But for whatever reason, and I don't think I've entirely figured it out yet, it's just that even though it is hard, I can get myself to do it. And I think that's because I'm talking about the things that I'm so passionate about, which is combat sports. Oh man, I don't know. I think I've kind of mentioned this in past episodes, just that this has really been, I guess, like combat sports in general has just been such a salvation for me. And it's just been such a place of refuge for me. And I just discovered it. And that's something that we all need to do as people, is to just go out there and find what it is that you like to do. And just, I guess something that I guess one takeaway that I kind of had from that interview that Jens had was the fact that he's saying prior to, I guess in this particular case, let's take MMA fighters since that's what he did. But prior to you starting MMA, there was something that you like to do. I guess like what he's getting at is that, okay, you had the opportunity of a prize fighting career come up, but then you had interests that came up before that. You had things that you liked to do before that, and I don't know, through one way or another, perhaps it was one of those things where it's like you never planned on having a prize fighting career, but then that you did end up doing that. But like, that's not all you are. That's not everything that encompasses you. So what is it that you like to do? And I mean, obviously that's going to extend to a lot of other obviously that's going to be different to everybody, but we all have a thing that we're passionate about, that we like to do. And I guess I find that part interesting, as far as, hey, you like to do something before you started your athletic career. And, you know, your athletic career is only going to last so long, so you need to find that refuge, or that safe haven that you can go to once your athletic career is over. And that's what Jens Pulver has with his Twitch stream, and he seems really happy about it. He even talked about how the UFC did this little feature on him, like a "Where Are They Now" sort of thing. And prior to when they actually did it for him, he was at a point in his life where he was like, I don't want to do it because I'm not happy with where I'm at. But then eventually doing this Twitch stream, it got him to the point where he did enjoy where he was at life and just having peace. And honestly, thinking about this right now, it makes me think, okay, that aspect of it can even be an episode to talk about, as far as finding that peace. But, you know, I'll save that for a different time. And I guess what I found interesting about it was the fact, I guess what I found interesting about that was the fact that he says that there was something that you liked prior to a sporting career. And I'm basing this off a conversation that I had with a coworker recently about, I guess, just the idea that it seems like, I mean, obviously this isn't always the case, but a lot of times the things that we enjoy doing or that we like to do, it started out when we were kids, or just a lot of things that you enjoyed during your childhood carry over to even when you're an adult. And I guess I noticed the tie-in with that, because he's saying, okay, prior to your fighting career, you had something that you enjoyed doing, and that develops early on and all that stuff. So I guess how that's relevant to me, and I'll just relate it to my situation so that perhaps you can have a better understanding of it and see how it would apply to you or anyone else. From an early age, I grew to love combat sports, and that's just carried over throughout my entire life, well into adulthood. And I think it's only recently that I've really started leaning into that I've really kind of tried to make something out of that, or just make some type of franchise and do something like bigger picture with the interests that I have now, as opposed to, okay, before I was just doing basically a talk podcast about MMA, where now what I'm doing is that I'm taking all these stories that I've seen, I've heard through a lifetime of fandom, and sharing with you how you can improve your own life, or just what's the lesson you can take away from that, what's the value in that. And I don't know, there's something fulfilling about doing that. And I haven't exactly figured all of it out yet, but I'm really enjoying doing that. I guess when I think about it, I mean, I've definitely heard this before where people will say, follow your passion. And yeah, that is an important piece of advice, but I guess for whatever reason right now, I don't know if this will change, but for whatever reason right now, I feel like what's just as important, or what's more important, or what doesn't get talked about as much is that, yes, you need to follow your passion, but you need to find it first. And however you want to go about finding that, either for yourself or maybe if you want to help somebody else, how you help somebody else find it, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And I guess, once again, maybe that whole finding your passion part, maybe I'm bringing that up because I feel like that's not something that's really, I guess, emphasized, or yeah, we just don't, at least I didn't hear it as much, because it's like, before you can follow your passion, you need to discover what your passion is. And I guess in my sort of experience, there were times when I was a child where I just kind of went with the flow and didn't really assess or be proactive with the things that I'm interested in. I mean, I did that eventually, or did it a little bit later in my teen years when I started exercising and working out more often, and going to the gym and all that stuff. But I don't know. It would be good to, I guess here's how I'm interpreting it. It would be good to discover that sooner than later, or, with the whole interest in combat sports that I have, it's like, okay, you discover that at a young age, but let's lean into that sooner than you actually did. So, a little bit of food for thought for everybody. I don't know. Jen's story is really incredible. I think also what really stands out with Jen's Pulver, especially given that, as I've been a MMA fan for longer, once again, I feel like I say this a lot, but you discover that there are a lot of deplorable people in the industry, and there's only a few instances where you actually have people who seem like good people. And Jen's really seems like that, because he loves interacting with fans. He has a wife, he has kids. He's the complete opposite of a father that his own dad was. And he's enjoying life. I mean, hell, I rewatched the interview and I heard him talk about just the whole aspect of age and all that stuff. And when I heard that part, I was all like, oh, I need to jot this down, because that needs to be an episode for later. And I guess, I don't know, I guess I find it a little interesting, because I wonder how I'll interpret things from his story now that I'm older, now that I know the things that I do, and just, I guess, going through some of those, I guess, hurdles of figuring out what you want to do, or just, the whole, just, I guess, hell, even the whole age factor, and just, you feel motivated when you hear him say the stuff that he does. At least I do, and maybe you do as well if you wanted to take a listen or look into it and all that stuff. But yeah, more than anything, from a personal level, Jens is one of my favorites. There's a lot more that I can say about Jens Pulver as a person, and this is definitely something that I'm going to revisit. I mean, I don't know when, but I'm definitely going to come back to stuff that he's said, or just his life experiences and all that other stuff. It's a God, man, hell, even just talking about how when I first heard about Jens Pulver really takes me back to that time in my life. I guess it's kind of making me feel nostalgic, kind of like what I mentioned a couple episodes ago, as far as, thinking about that time and it, bringing me back there, and just hell, I talked about that in the BJ Penn documentary. Just seeing that documentary took me back to what I was going through at that time. It's sort of the same thing here with Jens Pulver, as far as what I was doing in my life and just what I was pursuing for a career and all that stuff. The memories are nice, and I guess it just also makes me very nostalgic, for lack of a better term. So I think I'll just leave you with that. Just look for your passion in life, and there are many ways to find it, so don't be afraid to go searching for it. And with that, that takes care of episode 14. I want to thank everybody once again. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments that you want to leave, you can do so in the comments section below. Give me a follow on Instagram, Life and Combat Sports. That takes care of the 3rd edition of MMA. We got one more for you before the month is out. And I know what I'm going to talk about in that episode. So it's going to be fun to do that. But yeah, we'll do it soon. I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.